I don't think that transness is any one thing. I don't think that transness looks any one way. And kind of the journeys that trans people are on are so varied. There is not sort of one narrative around what trans experience looks like. So I would encourage people to unlearn thinking about transness in sort of some monolithic way or some flattened way. Hear people's stories, you know?
Welcome to another episode of Don't Quote Me. I believe we're in episode 9. Ximon, I'd love if you could introduce yourself to the audience, full name, and then maybe your title here at the Trans Foundation.
Yes. So my name is Ximon Kittok. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the co-founder and executive director at the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation.
Okay, so we were just having a brief conversation around you being the executive director and how much you're having to do roles like this where you're in front of the camera, you're having to do interviews, but it sounds like your passion is actually way more boots on the ground, someone that's doing the day-to-day work. Help me understand how you even navigate the differences between it, because the Trans Foundation only has a couple of people on staff.
Correct.
What help me understand that.
Yeah, so we just turned 10 years old, and we started off as a very, very small, scrappy organization supporting trans education in the city here. So we were giving scholarships to trans students and people who were going through vocational training. Back then, I was part of the founding team and sort of doing all of the boots on the ground stuff. Basically, all aspects of the organization kind of fell to me. So I think that's really what got me into it, was the work, was giving back to the community. And since we've grown in the last 10 years, obviously we have an office now, we have a couple of staff, and our programmatic stuff has expanded a lot. It made sense for me to stay in the role as the executive director, but yeah, I will say that it's not necessarily my favorite part of the position is being in front of a camera.
Yeah.
I would much rather be working with the community, supporting the community, chatting with the community.
For folks who may be discovering your work for the first time, how do you describe the mission of the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation?
I would say that the mission, kind of in its broadest form, is that we support and celebrate the trans community here in Kent County. So we are limited to the county. We are pretty focused on folks that are kind of in the area. We do have a whole arm that is programmatic, where we are supporting through tangible ways the community, and I can get into some of those programs if you want. And then the other arm is basically figuring out how to have spaces where trans people are celebrated, where trans folks can find friends, find community. I think especially after the pandemic, there was a lot of isolation in the community where people were just disconnected. And I think now more than ever, it's really important that we find these spaces where folks can find friends and find joy and lightness despite all the heaviness in the world right now. So
That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to that lightness, how do you work with people that, especially in the world that we live in today, which there's a host of issues across the board, from just blatant fascism that's crazy, but like, how are you finding lightness for yourself? Because I imagine in order for you to serve other human beings in that way, you have to have that for yourself. Where are you finding your own lightness?
That's a great question. I do have a few outlets. I love to dance. I think dance is a space of liberation for me. So I have a lot of friends who enjoy dancing, and so I usually try to make it once or twice a week out somewhere to move my body in that way. I have a number of really, really lovely partners and friends that we find ways to, just exist as people in community. Not that the heaviness isn't there, but
Right.
that we can find, that it's really the spark of connection that can really lighten the load. So
That makes a lot of sense. And also dance, there's a ton of really interesting research that's coming out right now. Like, I used to think that going out on a Friday night and dancing was like, I found it stress relieving, obviously, but just because it was fun. But it turns out, scientifically, it's actually extremely good for relieving stress in your bones and in your body and in your muscles. It actually does release tension.
A funny story, since I hit 40, which I hit 40 this year, I started going
I'll
to
do that. I do it this year as well.
yeah, I started going to raves for the first time. So sometimes I'm going out from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. and it's really, really
You might
delightful.
need to invite me to one of these because I might need
Okay.
to do some of this as well. Because I don't think I've been to a rave since my 20s, so I think it'd
Yeah.
be really fun to do something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. Okay, going back to the program. So, what kind of support services does your organization provide, and why are they so critical, especially within Kent County, especially within West Michigan?
Yeah, absolutely. So we made a point to grow programmatically in areas that we were seeing gaps in the community. So there are a number of other organizations in town that are doing really important work around healthcare, support groups, some of these other areas. So the programmatic areas that we focus on are ones that we saw a gap in. So our big ones are we have an academic scholarship for trans and non-binary folks who are going to school or getting training in the area. That's
Very
our
cool.
oldest program. We've given 100 grand out in the last 10 years to students
That's
to
so
help
cool.
them kind of achieve their educational goals. We have our update program, which supports folks through the legal name change process at the court. It can be a bureaucratic and expensive process that a lot of folks don't have kind of the wherewithal to navigate the bureaucracy. So we
A lot of
supply,
red tape.
yes. So we help folks with guidance, with filling out paperwork, with the financial piece, and that's been really life changing. We are nearing 500 people that we've helped through this process with. And then there's a whole kind of separate arm to the update program where we are helping people navigate legal documents. So if they need access to a new birth certificate or a passport or an ID with an updated name and birth, gender marker on it, we can help folks navigate those processes, including cost.
That's
Those are probably our two biggest, but we do have a number of other ones. We are only a team of two, but we have basically 5 major programs.
wow.
The scholarships, this name change process. We have our gender junk program, which offers gender affirming items to trans folks. These are things like binders, tucking underwear, wigs, makeup, a whole slew of things to help folks feel more at ease in their bodies. And then we also have a transportation program that helps folks gain access to unlimited bus fare cards, some Uber rides, and bicycles during the warmer months. We have a bunch of small things, a library, a resource guide.
We're just kind of sitting in the
Yep,
library, and
yep.
all the resources are all around us right now.
Yep. My coworker Gage loves a zine, so we have a lot of educational content that is just in sort of like little 101 zine sort of format. And then we just try to focus on having some social gatherings to help folks find friends and fight isolation. But a lot of these things are really vital right now, not only because a lot of people are struggling financially, but I think it's more important than ever right now for trans folks to have accurate documentation with, updated name and gender marker. There's a lot of pullback on trans affirming healthcare right now, where it's becoming harder and harder for folks to access like medical care. And in some ways, our gender junk program offering some of these maybe more external ways to kind of present how you want to present are going to become more and more important as we kind of navigate a new healthcare landscape where it might just be harder to get access to HRT or surgical care. So
Right. It is crazy times to say the least when it comes to that, and we could probably spend an entire interview just talking about the landscape that everyone is navigating right now.
Yeah.
But I do want to keep the focus really on the work that
Sure.
you all are doing, especially when it comes to your role specifically. So can you give us a little insight of what your actual day-to-day looks like as an executive director of the foundation? Because obviously if you got all these programs and you still have to be the face and you're throwing parties and it sounds like you're also trying to dance on the weekends, how are you just navigating your day-to-days as an executive director in a nonprofit?
I will say it's not easy. And especially with a nonprofit this small where there isn't a full staff to kind of support the efforts. And I do think we are understaffed and we are working to kind of expand that this year. My day-to-day as an executive director consists of a lot of emails. I will say that there's a lot of emails involved. My coworker is in charge of programmatic support,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes I need to step in and kind of help out, but oftentimes my coworker is handling all of the programmatic piece. When people walk in the door and they need help with um, accessing one of the programs, maybe they want to get document updated, maybe they want to get their name changed, maybe they want to look at our closet and see if there's a gender affirming item that is here in the space. Usually my coworker is handling that. I'm doing a lot of emails. I am tackling events,
Mm-hmm.
fundraisers, uh,
Grant writing.
grant writing. Yeah, we don't have a fund development person, so
Mm-hmm.
any of the events, any of the um, trying to get funds from a lot of different avenues, including grants, yeah, are generally falls to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky that I do have a working board, so there is some
Good.
support there
Good.
where folks can kind of like step into some of the gaps. But yeah, it feels
So
like I'm
you're
juggling about
actually.
a million
I
things
was
at
gonna
any
say. So
given
it
day.
sounds
Yeah.
like you probably have about 4 or 5 people's jobs just wrapped up into your role.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I we do a lot of work in the nonprofit space, and it is not an easy spot, especially when it comes to fundraising or events or.
Yeah.
And like typically, there's different roles for every single one of those aspects. But it sounds like you're actually navigating a whole bunch of those. Just you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
crazy. Thank you for giving us some of that insight. So,
Sure.
what core values or principles guide your work at the Trans Foundation?
Sure. Yeah, I think that there are a few that came to mind as I was thinking about this question. I think the narratives around trans existence in general are have historically been pretty dark. So it's either trans tragedy narratives, maybe in fictional media, it is about how hard it is to be trans. I think generally, maybe a little less in the last 10 years, but generally, historically, when trans people showed up in the news, it was because they were murdered or some sort of violent act against. So there's a lot of really heavy media
Mm-hmm.
content around trans existence. So we made a point early on to really focus on um, trans euphoria. We really wanted to kind of switch the narrative and reframe it away from trans tragedy narratives and towards a narrative where trans people, it focused on the reasons why being trans, why shifting and leaning into your most authentic self is actually a really celebratory act. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to really celebrate
Mm-hmm.
the with being trans. And I think there's a lot of community. I think there's a lot of liberation around being your most authentic self. So I think some of the core values that we bring is focusing on leaning into celebration, to liberation, to euphoria and not dysphoria. I think there's so much space to talk about how transness can look a million different ways, and I think there's a really big freedom there um, that kind of shapes the work that we do. Uh, and then I think maybe autonomy is another big one, like just having bodily autonomy,
Yeah.
showing up exactly how you want to show up. Uh, yeah, and fighting for the things that make autonomy,
Yeah.
like I think access to healthcare is a big one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I really love. I mean, I think everyone can get behind authenticity, especially, and like also just the level of care that you're clearly giving to people, especially when it comes to the bodily autonomy. I mean, like there's I love what you juxtapose what is obviously can be present in media landscapes, but the reality is like people are still human beings, and there's this whole avenue where everyone wants to feel like their true authentic self,
Yeah.
and that is a universal truth that exists for everyone. And you're like, hey, this is also here too. Hello.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people forget or like to other people into different zones, and which starts a dehumanization process. And it's really cool that that is like one of those core values, and is a kind of like the thread that we'd like to pull on when it comes to the people that we talk to. Hey, like some of this stuff is like just a normal human being thing. Quit
Yeah.
making it something that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if you know the poet Alok, but they've said a lot about how trans people, the liberation that trans people kind of present to the world actually is something that is beneficial for cisgender people too.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The boxes that cisgender people have put themselves in, the rules that they have made for themselves, trans people offer a vision of that these boxes are not as rigid as we think they are, and there really is a freedom in being able to explore your own gender. So,
I deeply resonate with that, and I also think it's very true for. I mean, I grew up within a bubble of a bubble of a bubble in the cult land, and
I feel that.
for me, I have always every single preconceived notion I had of any different community has always been completely shattered by encountering someone that embodied it. And it only offered more of a mirror and a reflection of like what I was missing within the own constructs that I grew up in. And that curiosity keeps me moving forward of like, hey, none of this actually has to stay as rigid or fundamental as what I was handed
Sure.
when I was a small child.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people need to continue to explore beyond what they were handed when they were young. But this isn't my soapbox moment. I want to hear more about you. Sorry. Okay. How has your personal experience shaped the way you lead this organization?
I think this is maybe the hardest question for me to answer, and I think it is because I also grew up within a small, rural, conservative community, and I think the way that my parents helped me navigate life and get to a place where I am now has helped me to give back into the community. And
Were you homeschooled?
for a short period of time.
I mean,
I did a little bit of everything, yeah.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
So I think who I am is so intricately wrapped up in my upbringing, my unraveling of some of the things that I was taught, my kind of coming into myself. I think the work that I do is important to me because I am part of the community, because I am a genderqueer, non-binary person. I want to give back to the community that has given me so much and has offered such deep friendship, deep understanding of myself, deep understanding of others. I've just learned so much through my own journey and through the journey of the community that I want to give back. But I think ultimately maybe the answer to this question is that I grew up as an empathetic person, and I want to move this organization forward, acknowledging that I am a very specific type of trans person. I am a non-binary, maybe sometimes seen as mask, white trans person. And I think for me, understanding my own lived experience as being just like one tiny sliver of the community, and knowing that there is so many other types of experiences through the lens of binary versus non-binary versus racialized understandings of gender through class and status and all of these things. I think it's important that we remember that there are a lot of other voices out there and a lot of other experiences that are not necessarily my own.
Of course.
So this organization is a great place for us to highlight some of those other voices and make sure that this isn't some sort of monolithic journey. So for us.
Yeah, I thank you for also just exploring that a little bit, because the way that you get through to everyone is through the specifics, and everybody's specific stories are different.
Absolutely.
And yours is unique to you, but that obviously doesn't encapsulate the whole. I always like to imagine it's like you're looking through one keyhole, but that doesn't mean that that's every single keyhole that exists.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Okay, what boundaries feel important for you while speaking publicly about your story, and what you represent?
Sure. I don't know that
If there are any
I'm
boundaries.
kind of an open book to a large
Okay.
degree. So I don't know that I necessarily have many boundaries around my story.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very specific upbringing that I am very open about. Uh, but I think maybe this is a good question just to answer on behalf of most trans people,
Mm-hmm.
most places. I think the boundaries when interacting with a trans person probably are you should not ask trans people about their medical history, about how their body is, and about old name, old pronouns. Those are good boundaries to just kind of stay
Mm-hmm.
away with or stay away from. If people want to offer up that information, they can. But for me, basically, once folks start to transition, there is sometimes a curiosity amongst cis people about what that past life looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to recognize that, like, sometimes that past history for trans people is painful and they don't want to talk about that, or they don't want to talk about their medical experience, much like anyone wouldn't want to talk about, like, kind of the medical stuff that they have or have not kind of experienced. So, um, but yeah, I think for me, I'm pretty much an open book.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm leading the organization, I do like to be as open and compassionate to people's curiosity, because I think sometimes people are just not educated and they're curious, and I want to be that point of education for people sometimes.
Okay.
So.
No, that's very helpful. Um, One of the things that I'm picking up on, especially with your openness, is like you're obviously trying to create safety for people that are, especially walking in here. I mean, I was like, even though this is a small office, it's a cozy office,
Very
and
cozy.
immediately, I mean, you have very warm lighting. We had to adjust a little bit of it just so that you could see us on camera, but there's lights up on the ceiling, and it feels very warm in here. And I immediately was like, I know that this space isn't even designed for me, but even I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
So like, how do you create space that feels safe, affirming, and dignified, especially for people who may have experienced harm in other areas?
Right. Yeah. I think you're right that there is something about how we set up our space that we did want to feel warm, inviting, a place that people could just come in and hang out and feel comfortable, not, kind of a sterile office building. So I do think there is something about the space itself
Mm-hmm.
that can be very inviting, and we've worked hard to make it that way. I think the other things that we try to make sure that this space feels inviting and safe and dignified is we are a trans organization, so we do kind of like prioritize being a trans-centered space. This means that we have trans staff members who kind of know where people are when they're like coming in. We have there's a level of overlap between lived experience of our staff and our community members that are coming in that can really help immediately kind of solidify some trust
Mm-hmm.
right there. And then I think it's just kind of standard other stuff. We like to be attentive. We like to give people a space to um, really just chat. A lot of times people just want to tell their story to someone, and
Mm-hmm.
we can be that space where we can give them an opportunity to really just chat with us on kind of a person to person basis, not necessarily like an organizational to sort of
Right.
client basis. We like to not blur the lines, but we do like to be personable and attentive to those things. And then just coming at it from a place of compassion. We know that people are coming to us with a lot of stuff on their plate, especially now. A lot of people are struggling with housing or employment or access to medical care. We know that a lot of people in our community have experienced a lot of different types of trauma over the course of their life. So there is something that we try to foster a space where people can come kind of as their full being, but also that they are handled gently and compassionately while they're here. So.
Yeah, that gentleness out probably goes a really long way, especially when it comes to if they need to have something difficult that they need to just share.
Yeah.
That also then you can probably very quickly also know what program or what avenue of service that you can provide to them because of that gentleness, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really lucky that we're located in the Pride Center building, so we are separate organizations. But it's really nice that we are kind of like right next door to each other, because oftentimes there is care or programming that we can refer over to Pride Center if they need it, while also giving them the programmatic care that they need here. And Pride Center can do the same for us. Basically, if there is a trans person that needs something that we can offer, they send them back to us, and we between the two organizations we can really cover a lot of space. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
some good high fives right there when it comes to like the organizations. For the people that are going to be watching this and are curious about just overall support for the Trans Foundation, how can they do that? Can give us all the details, like not just like the website. Give us all the specifics of like how they can support this foundation.
Yeah. I hate to do this right off the bat, but I do think donating to organizations that are doing on the ground work actually is incredibly impactful. Your money does go a long way, especially with a staff as small as ours. A lot of the money gets cycled right back into the community in really impactful ways. I will say that if you are considering donating, it's really helpful if folks kind of get on a recurring monthly donation basis. That allows us to kind of like maintain a certain level of stability throughout the entire year. And, you know, there's definitely like peaks in some of our donation cycles. So if you're really looking to impact our organization in a real big way, even if it's just a small amount monthly, a recurring monthly donation is really, really impactful. There are some other ways. I do think that you can obviously volunteer with us. We do have like a variety of tasks, from very simple to, you know, all the way up to maybe like joining a committee or joining our board. There is space for that here as well. And I think broader, I think not just impacting our organization, but impacting the whole city culture. I think we all need to stay active, stay motivated to contact representatives, to vocalize our support for the community, to fight back against some of these, you know, anti-trans measures that are trying to be getting through in a number of ways. So, for example, right now, the federal government has proposed 2 new rules that would effectively make it impossible for trans youth to access healthcare.
Bunch of horseshit. I was just gonna say that.
Yes,
right?
yes. Yep. So
sorry.
You can say that. Yes, and I'm not opposed to saying that as well. But it would basically, there's 2 rules that are being proposed right now. One is basically blocking Medicaid and CHIP funding for youth trans medical care, and the other one would punish hospitals and providers for providing care by like threatening to remove Medicare and Medicaid funding access, basically. So these things are out for open comment. So this is something that you could do right now if you're watching this. If it's before February 17th, this is going to be something that you can go and actually leave a comment, you know, basically vocalize your support for, you know, scientifically proven, compassionate trans healthcare on these bills that are being proposed, so we can just flood the comment section.
This will be the first clip that we pull for this video.
Okay, cool. Yep. I did create a little URL in case it would be helpful. Basically, HRC has put together a little landing page. So if you go to tinyurl.com/HRC trans healthcare, you can find this landing page, and there's a space right on there, verbiage that you can use, and a place to comment on these 2 bills. I think that is making sure that you are putting in some work. You're not just doom scrolling. You're not just vocalizing support on posts, although that is important. I think the more vocal, the more open, the more loud we can be, it's going to be really important, but I want folks to also put in work. Trans lives are on the line, and I think it's I think asking for 5 or 10 minutes of time to kind of really impactfully support the community is going to be really important. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Before we move to our soapbox moment, I do have one more question.
Sure.
And this is obviously I'm not asking you to speak for everybody, but what would you want someone watching to learn or unlearn most from this conversation about the trans community or even your experience?
Yeah, I guess I'm assuming that maybe the people watching this are already maybe on the same page that
Potentially.
that trans people exist,
Yeah.
that maybe trans people deserve rights.
There are definitely people that follow us that are it's we there's
Okay.
a lot, it goes the full gamut for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as far as learning, I think there's going to be a whole slew of people, maybe from, you know, the not knowing anything to knowing some things about the trans community. I think I would encourage folks to just continue to educate yourself. The media narratives right now, especially kind of on the more right-leaning news sites, have flattened trans experience to something kind of grotesque, and it is filled with disinformation and misinformation that is not accurate and does not convey who trans people actually are, what the community actually is asking for. So I would encourage everyone, regardless of where they are, to just continue to educate yourself. Find media narratives that are actually written by actual trans people, so you can actually hear from trans people themselves. You can humanize them. Yeah, I guess wherever you are, just keep on learning. And then I think as far as unlearning, I think everyone could do this.
I mean, I still struggle with it specifically.
Sure.
I like pronouns myself. I even mispronounced you earlier today, and I probably will do it again. But I'm still, that's something that I'm actively like, hey, dude, you can figure this out.
Yeah. And I think pronouns are part of this next little unlearning piece that I have. I think that the main piece that most people could continue with unlearning is just that gender looks any particular way. That men, women, and non-binary folks, they run the whole gamut of expression. So I don't think that transness is any one thing. I don't think that transness looks any one way. And kind of the journeys that trans people are on are so varied. There is not sort of one narrative around what trans experience looks like. So I would encourage people to unlearn thinking about transness in sort of some monolithic way or some flattened way. Hear people's stories, you know?
Trans folks have been a scapegoat for fascist ideation. Right now, it's more important than ever to stand up for each other. Tell us how our community can better support organizations like yours in order to combat oppressive systems in place.
I think you're absolutely right that the trans community has become a scapegoat. I think we can all see that. I think more than ever, we need to stay loud, stay angry, stay supportive of our community, continue to educate yourself. I think there's never a space that more education couldn't be helpful. And I think it will also really help you to shut down transphobia that you see. I think a lot of these conversations, sure, they're happening kind of on a broad scale in the media, but I think we also witness this trickle-down effect of transphobia, of disinformation around trans experience that can be combated on a one-to-one basis. So it is hard. It is hard for trans people to have these conversations with family members, with people in their spheres. It's going to be hard for other people who want to support the community to also have these conversations. But this is the work. This is the work that is going to actually change people's minds, that's going to humanize trans people, and is going to actually tilt the change the tides of how we're seeing this play out in America and worldwide. So we need you to use your voice. We need you to push your representatives to continue to stand up for the community. It is so easy to, and historically we have seen that the trans community has been used as a bargaining chip in some of these legislative pieces. Trans people, queer people, people of color, immigrants, I think we need to band together in a really important way too. The trans community isn't alone in this. They are just one community that is being targeted. There are many other communities that also need our support. I think we are stronger together, and I think if we can all show up for each other, this is really going to be something that we can get through and find some brightness on the other side of this. Donate, volunteer, stay active, don't despair.